always like to start this meeting by saying thank you so very much for spending your Friday afternoon and especially your Friday Valentine's Day afternoon. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Um, the name of our group is We the People, by the people, for all the people. And our mission in this group is to make personal connections with our local legislators by sharing our personal stories. Um, our our aim in this group is to make positive legislation happen as we continue to educate and inform legislators on what our lives look like, because we are the ones who have the most lived experience. And everyone is welcome in this group: self advocates, family members, providers, community enthusiasts for developmental disabilities, and really anyone else that wants to be a contributing member to our group, which does not have an official organization. We are family led, family driven. And we do record these meetings because we all have very busy lives and it's impossible to get to every Friday meeting. But the value shared here between families is unbelievable and has really helped even shape policies as we have these discussions with one another, and then we take that to our legislators. So we offer this information on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/, for all the people Florida. And like I said, we're pretty grassroots because we're just family. So there's no funding. We don't have a website, but we do have a Facebook page. So if you look up For All the People as a group on Facebook, you will find us. We are very active, and that is our spot to talk in between our weekly meetings. We meet every single Friday at 3 o'clock, all the way through legislative session. Our legislative session starts March 4th, so they're less than a month away, and there's a lot that's been going on. I saw Melissa on the line. Hey, Melissa, do you know if Doug is with us yet?
Hi, yes, he is, but it's not saying Doug Bruce. It just says, I think he's either Zoom user or iPhone 201, but I think he's Zoom user.
Okay, well, I
And on his end, it said that he was muted by host. I don't know if,
oh,
um,
okay.
yeah,
So
because
I'm
we're,
gonna unmute. I asked to unmute the Zoom user,
yeah,
and
he came, it says that he's saying he still can't talk.
still can't.
Hmm, I
Hmm.
wonder why.
Ask to
But
unmute.
you're showing that everybody's unmuted?
Some people are muted and some people aren't, but the ones that are, I can be like, "Hey, ask to unmute," and I'm just hitting that button relentlessly. Oh
Okay.
wait, but that went to Tina Cook. So hold on. Sorry, Tina. Um, let's see.
I
I,
think he is Zoom user. He had left and came back in to see if that helped.
well, today has been the day for technological difficulties for me as well. So is I can never do too many things at once. Zoom
Still
user,
having trouble.
Zoom user Doug, if you can hear us, could you write in the chat? And meanwhile, oh, Melissa, you're also having trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, happy Friday, everyone.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give a minute for Doug to see if he can work out his audio at least. Um, and Alan has to step off at 3:15 to 3:30. So, Alan, do you have any words from above here that you want to share with families?
I'll tell you, at the legislature, they're asking good questions at the committees of Agency with Persons with Disabilities and Agency for Healthcare Administration. And so that's good news. There is great interest. I mean, we thought last year was great, and it was great, but everyone's engaged. Uh, Chapter 393 is probably the most talked about statute these days. Every next week, there's more committee meetings. There's a bunch of autism bills coming that are going to be very good, and just it's looking good right now. And I think we're gonna have a really great session. I'm real excited. I'm worried about the federal level is what I'm worried about right now. The state level is really good. We've been briefed from the federal arc United States that the focus right now has got to be on uh, how much it will harm us if there's cuts, not like what we normally talk about expanding at the federal level. So just so you know, that's kind of like the internal way we're dealing with it.
So glad to hear you say that, because I have been kind of like a squirrel in a cage wondering what do we focus on here, because we had just wrapped our head around the states, and then last week, I mean, thank you for everyone who started the conversation on the federal level, because it really started to generate more conversations on our roles here, and I am really excited that we have someone that had Melissa, I think I just heard her, that has had experience at the federal advocacy. Um, and I wanted to give Doug a chance to come on. Or Doug, are you here? And then Melissa, or we'll just switch roles and have Melissa first and Doug second.
And you're referring to a different Melissa, right? Not Melissa Mincy.
Oh, yes, I am. So
Okay. All right, good. That's what I thought. Just check.
I have two Dougs in my head, and I mixed them up this morning, and two Melissas, and I can't talk about the one without the other. So, um, Doug, are you here?
He's trying to work out whatever he's got, but is the other Melissa back on? Or?
Yes.
I'm here. I'm in the pink shirt with the blonde hair.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I had to resort to my phone instead of my laptop. So if I look like I'm squinting around trying to see people, that's why. I'm trying to figure out a way to get on the Zoom with my laptop so I can at least see y'all, even if y'all can't see me there. So anyway, do you need me to go ahead or do you want me to?
Well, yeah, I think we'll switch the order. So what we're going to talk, Doug is a leading expert on policy and was going to help us with our legislators, and he still is. But we're going to give him a chance to work out his technical difficulties. And Melissa, I would love for you to just kind of introduce yourself and she's here because I said, hey, I know you have experience at federal advocacy, and our families are afraid, and that definitely includes me. Do you have some meaningful advice? And Melissa said, do you guys meet on Zoom? Could I come talk to you? So absolutely so grateful that you're taking your Valentine's Day with us. But I have not given a great introduction because I don't know a whole lot. So if
No
you,
worries.
yeah,
Okay. Well, first of all, my name is Melissa Ortiz, and I live in Washington, D.C. I am the founder and principal of a company called Capability Consulting that I started in January of last year after leaving the National Center for Public Policy Research. And I can get into that a little bit more in a minute, but I have been the commissioner of the Administration on Disability at the federal level. I have been in state government. I wrote my first letter of advocacy when I was 4 years old to President Nixon and have been doing advocacy work ever since on some level. And I'll be 59 in May. So I've learned a lot, have a lot to learn. But the first thing I want to say is I'm scared too. I get it. I understand why you're scared. So let's be scared together and deal with this. The most important thing I can say to you is when you reach out to your attorneys general, and my husband, the English major, informed me that it is not attorney generals, it is attorneys general. So he's not here and won't be here till 9 o'clock tonight, but I feel like I owe it to my Valentine to at least say it right. So the first thing I can say is be really brief. Not to be mean, but they are so busy and they're getting so many calls that the briefer you can be, the more attention you're going to get. They don't care that you're crying at night in your pillow. And it's not because they're awful people. It's because they have thousands of people just like you calling them. So get your bullet points down And then the other thing I would say is send a postcard instead of a letter or an email, because they're getting so many emails that I have it on good authority, believe it or not, from some Democrat staffers here in DC, that Hill staffers and state Hill staffers are putting filters on their emails so that anything about this topic is going into a special folder. And if they're doing it, y'all, I can guarantee you that staff in Attorney General's office are doing it. Yes, ma'am.
Can we back up? So
Yeah.
our group, we focus on talking to our local legislature.
Okay, that's
I
real
was
helpful.
wondering if you could back up just a little bit on why we would be talking to our Attorney General, because I just tuned into this part of the conversation and it's a lot of information. So, could you give like a big picture of kind of the concerns on why you would reach out to that group?
Sure. Sure. Okay, so what has happened is, in an order to protect kids, minors, from um, transgender hormones and surgeries and things like that, a 504 lawsuit has been filed out of Texas. I think it's 20 states now have joined. And what has happened is they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. They want to get rid of 504 all in general, and that has to start. Um, the it doesn't have to start. It starts most times with people asking the Attorney General to file a suit. So what has happened is a bunch of parents and educators have gone to their Attorney General in their state and said, can you file suit against the federal government to get us out of the 504 section of the Rehab Act? And what they're trying to do is protect children, and I can honor that. But what I can't honor is that they are not protecting children with disabilities. They are throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and instead of, and I keep saying that, and what that means is they want to get rid of the whole section 504 instead of tightening definitions and tightening parameters that will exactly. Thank you for posting that ACL link. I used to work at ACL. I was an appointee there in the first Trump administration. So what they're doing is they are trying to protect children while putting other children at risk. And why this is so important is that if the disability community will stand up and say, we need 504 to protect us, but we also want parents to have the right to protect their children from gender transition until that child reaches the age of majority. That's the 40,000 foot viewed. Is that, I'm seeing some,
So, okay, that's where I was going with that. So instead of going to your local representative about this 504 lawsuit that Florida is a part of,
yes,
we would then reach out to our state attorney general. And there is some confusion in that in itself because our state attorney general has recently joined the federal team. I forgot what her role is, but
right.
there's a transition and there's a guy who has been recommended and there's this interim guy. Nicole, could you post his information that I sent you the other day?
I'm gonna put, yeah, I'll put some of that information
So
here. And I just want to really underline because I attended the briefing that the Disability Rights Education Defense Fund put on
Mm-hmm.
a couple of days ago. I really want two things to be communicated here. And I'm going to put also, they had some frequently asked questions that they put together in on a one pager. It's a couple of pages, but I will share that document in the chat and also in our Facebook page. But two bottom line things. So first of all, there's been some miscommunication about whether or not this case is still active. Yes, it is still active.
Mm-hmm.
Awaiting a report that's going to happen on the 25th of February. So the intent is to have Florida and all the other 17 states that have signed on to the suit drop the suit before that, if possible. That would be the most ideal outcome initially. So, and then the second piece of misinformation I've seen commonly spoken about online is that regardless of the what brought us to this moment. So regardless of what started this ball rolling, because there you're going to see in the suit, and I put all of these links in the chat. But regardless of what started the suit, and you're going to see things like gender dysphoria and stuff like that mentioned within the suit, the
Mm-hmm.
bottom line is that all of the complainants, including the state of Florida, are asking for a complete repeal of 504, Section 504, and you're going to see screenshots from the Zoom or the Zoom call that I was on with a gentleman named Mr. Schwartz, and that's going to be in the chat where we highlighted specifically in the suit where they call for the repeal of 504. So those are the two bottom line things I wanted to mention, because there is a lot of things we could talk about with, specifically to this case. But 504 doesn't just protect for school. 504 has far reaching implications and protections outside of just public school. So, and I put the ACL link for that to break down further for your reading later. So that's in the chat.
Okay, Nicole, I appreciate.
Oh, great job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Nicole. I was getting there.
Mm.
And I would really encourage to, and your state legislators are not going to be able to do as much about this as the Attorney General's office is. The state legislators would have you believe that they can talk the Attorney General into doing what they want, and they can't. And I also want to say a word on behalf of my friend, Greg Abbott. He is my friend. He is supporting this lawsuit because he doesn't understand. He was injured as an adult. And this is something else very key that we've got to keep in mind here, is the fact that in the disability movement, there are people who were born with disabilities. There are military veterans. There are people who were injured as an adult or became disabled as an adult for whatever reason. And then there are the parents. And everybody has a different perspective. And I am trying to get a meeting with Governor Abbott to explain to him what is going on. I'm also trying to get a meeting with the governor of Iowa and with the Attorney General of Iowa, who is a personal friend, to sort of give them a come to Jesus, shall we say, to get this conversation kind of focused back where it needs to be, because very well-meaning people who were injured as adults and had the resources to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and go on and have incredibly financially successful lives don't understand the perspective of living with a disability and being on disability benefits and they absolutely have no freaking idea. And the first time I ever talked to Governor Abbott, we had that conversation, but clearly we need to have it again. So I'm going to wrap up what I have to say with this. I've been doing this disability advocacy as a professional since I was 18. As a paid professional since I was 18 years old, and I've never seen anything like this come to the forefront. I'm going to shut up and be available for questions, but you can reach me, Melissa, at capabilityconsulting.org. And Stephanie, if you can put that in the chat for me, because I can't get to it from my phone, I would really appreciate it.
Don't want you to shut up quite yet.
Okay, sorry. What else do you want to say?
Hang on, Tom. We're going to give her a chance to do questions if you wouldn't mind, because that 504 piece it's kind of like that hit me out of nowhere. I just learned about it this week, and it's like, what's that? But really, the families on this call are primarily involved with our home and community-based service waivers through Medicaid, and that is the fear-driven hanging thing over our heads. And last week we had talked about, making contact, calling our congressmen, our senators. Can you help with anything you've got on Medicaid? We've had like a lot of other states, but here in Florida, an incredible amount of our families have been a part of the Medicaid unwinding. Our funding is very difficult to obtain, and our waiver program in this state struggled for a few years, which is what kind of the inception of this group. So if you could spend time on the Medicaid cut and what we can do as family members to help elevate that or any advice?
The most, again, the most important thing I can say to you is that when you go, you must reach out. I would start in your local community. In your local community, the people that are service providers, and get your doctors involved. When you go to talk to your state representatives, focus on your state representative in the House and in the Senate, and then focus on the members of the committee that are in, the committee that is governing this. My brain is all over the place right now because I was prepared to talk about 504, but I was not prepared to talk about HCBS, but that's cool. I can do this.
Well,
So no,
H-
I'm
H-
ready. Let me
okay.
just finish what I have to say.
Okay,
So
okay.
again, the most important thing I can tell you is be brief. Be brief, be very to the point. And when you're contacting a state legislator's office, don't call. Put it in writing, because state legislators have very small staffs and they don't have time to talk to you for 20 minutes because there's another family just like you on hold waiting to talk to them. So postcards, invest in some 5x7 postcards and make your points, do it in handwriting, make your points very bulleted so that they understand what the problem is, and then tell them what you want them to do, which is stop the cuts. Stop the cuts.
But
And
that's the federal, so help me, that would be our US senator and
no, it would
they're
be,
not cutting it,
no.
right?
Okay, let me explain to you how Medicaid works. It is a federally funded program that is given to the states
Mhm,
to administer.
mhm.
And so the dirty little secret that the states don't want you to know is that the feds aren't the only ones who are cutting it. Especially in the more fiscally conservative states, they're saying, we don't need all this money, you can keep it. Does that not just blow your minds?
It does.
Oh,
And I've actually
Um,
been in the meetings where the comments are being made, and they aren't open meetings. They are invitation only meetings for that very reason. And
so,
and T Nurse has her hand raised and she's waving at us. So, and
okay, Tom, go ahead.
We'll talk about a couple of things. Section 504 is the foundation for educational civil rights, educational rights, and those types of things.
preach
And
it, brother.
it is completely offensive to try to blame it on protecting transgender children, to say that's what we can throw the baby out with the bathwater. Everybody, regardless of their needs,
I'm going to respectfully disagree with
when it
you.
comes to that.
Um,
I know you are, but I'm going to move on to the next point. Because the next point is that the cuts in the Medicaid waivers are part of, it's not a federally funded program. It's a federal and state funded program in a partnership. And it's the match. And it's the obligations in the federal that require certain deliverables to happen. So,
But the deliverables
not
have to
exclusive.
be asked for. The deliverables have to be asked for. I'm very clear on how this works. It is a federal state program. It is federally funded with a state match. I will correct myself on that. But the state asks for how much money they want. So
so
that
I
is,
understand that. We did not do the Medicaid drawdown in Florida. We are an anti-Medicaid state. We are leading the way. We're a Project 2025 light state and have been for several years now. And the problem really is that at some point we have to get people to actually want to care about people and not just hate people. And so right
they don't
now,
hate you. I know these
anybody
people. They do not
receiving
hate
any
you.
kind
They
of
do not
public benefit is going to,
understand.
well, whatever you want to call it. The bottom line
It's
is
very
if you're going to
different.
make random cuts, blanket cuts to programs without really doing the the research behind what they would be. You even have Steve Bannon coming out today talking about cutting Medicaid is a terrible political decision.
Yeah, I mean, when Steve Bannon comes out and says it's a terrible political decision, that's kind of a wake-up call for a lot of people. That's
So,
because it's
oh, can I
mostly
back?
That's because it's mostly Elon Musk doing those cuts.
I want to
Oh, no,
back
no,
up.
no, no,
I
no.
want to
Hold
This
back
on,
was
up. I
guys.
long
want to back
before
up.
Elon. Do
Before
not
we
blame
get
this on
there, let
Elon.
us raise hands.
I
We're
want
gonna
to back
try to
up.
keep
I
them
want to back
order.
up, please.
Yep,
Please,
yep.
please, please. I should have
Hold
put a
on, guys.
disclaimer. So we all have different belief systems in this group. We're all families that
Mm-hmm.
don't subscribe to the same thing. In this group, very specifically, we advocate for people with developmental disabilities to
Mm-hmm.
our local and state legislators. That's something that we have been doing since August 8th, 2023. What I wanted to talk about at the federal level with Medicaid is a lot of fear surrounding the new administration's proposed budget, like 2.3 million in Medicaid cuts, and not a lot of clarity on if there's carve outs. And um, when with all of that confusion around the families right now, my concern is that we are making great headway with our state legislators in the realm of developmental disability,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to lose track from that. But at the same time, if there's block grants, but like there's just a lot of confusion and lack of clarity when it comes to how is this going to work with these bills that are getting put forward, and a lot of fear with families that we're being left out of the conversation at all. So what we do with our
Mm-hmm.
local legislature is we go meet in their office out of season, out of the session thing. We get to know them. We talk about our family, our story, and it has been wildly effective. Now, when we talk about Donald Trump and his friends up there, that seems like a big undertaking to me. And so I'm trying to get from you, since you did work alongside the administration, what do you think as regular people, like we're not professionals, what we can do to really help be a part of that conversation? So,
Okay, I
Mhm.
can do that. All
Okay.
right. And I'm going to respectfully ask that everybody let me finish what I have to say. And then I'm happy to answer questions and entertain conversation, respectful conversation. Okay, first of all, yes, I was the first commissioner of the Administration on Disability under Donald Trump in his first thing. And I had the auspicious pleasure, I'm using that term very snidely and sarcastically, of having to look him in the face and say, you don't get it, and you're going to stop talking until I'm through talking to you about it, and then you can ask me questions. And let me tell you, the Indian Treaty Room at the White House, when that came out of my mouth, got really quiet. But he's a different person when the cameras are not around, and he actually managed to put his hands in his lap, shut his mouth, and listen, and he began to start to get it. And I saw that. Now, the next thing I need to tell you is that Elon Musk has a developmental disability. I mean, I think most of you as parents know what you're looking at when you look at it. And I see Paul nodding his head for all he's worth. Um, the reason there's no clarity is because we aren't having those conversations on the level that we need to have them yet. I will be being a part of those conversations as they're coming in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And if you have specific questions, please, please, please email me, and I will be delighted to put those in front of the people who are in the meetings. They know when they see me coming, I'm going to have a sheath of questions. Again, I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding on all parts, and Project 2025 is an abomination, and it has gotten in the way. And yes, I, as somebody who's is friends with people who wrote that thing, and I was supposed to be a part of that, and I was cut out when I started standing up for the rights of people with disabilities and the rights of their families. So I don't say that to make me sound like a goody two shoes, because I'm far from it. But please understand that I will fight for you, and I am fighting for you, and I will be in those conversations. There is no clarity right now because the staffers, the low-level staffers, are the ones having the conversations right now. And Daniel, I see you have a question. Okay, there, it came up on my computer. No, we do not need to worry immediately for our rights. but we need to be getting a game plan together in case it comes to that. Yes, my email is melissa@capabilityconsulting.org. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DCBelle, BELLE on wheels. Thanks, Stephanie. It's a natural reaction to be scared, because I'm scared, and I'll be very blunt. Sometimes my language gets the better of me, so I'll just be honest about that up front. I am a follower of Christ, and we have a pretty much daily discussion in my prayers about me keeping my tongue under control and not using so much profanity. But damn it, I'm scared. I'm pissed as hell. I'm pissed as hell, and I'm scared to death. Because there are people making comments about things they don't understand because they haven't had to live with them. Okay, Daniel, let me see. You're worried that he's going to put us in institutions. No, he doesn't have the right to do that. And it will be how long did it take gay marriage to get to the Supreme Court? Does anybody know off the top of their head? Almost 20 years from the local inceptions to getting in front of the Supreme Court. How long did it take the Dobbs decision to wind its way through the courts to return abortion rights to the state level? Does anybody know that? 10 to 15. So here's the thing. I was afraid when Barack Obama became president. I melted down because I had heard all the talk about Obamacare and things like that. And y'all, I read all 2,000 pages of it, and there were things in there that made my blood curdle because they aren't good for people with disabilities. And my husband looked at me and he said, "Do you think I'm going to let them take you out of this house and put you in an institution or give you a life-ending shot?" And that was a reality check for me because I realized I had a support system. So here's what I am telling you to do is to support each other and circle the wagons with the entire disability community, not just, and I love what you're doing with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but include those with physical disabilities in your circles as you can, to support each other, protect each other, and get to know your neighbors, because they'll be the ones who will stand up and support you and protect you because they care about you. And that's the next thing. Now, there are people who think it would be financially more expedient to put people with disabilities in institutions. They're wrong, and I have the numbers to prove that. And I am slowly but surely meeting with people. There are people in think tanks here in DC on both sides of the aisle who are talking about it, Nicole. And every time I hear of one, I go make an appointment with them. And the worst kept secret, it's also the best kept secret in DC about me, is a lot of people think I was injured as an adult in an accident. And I actually had an old white guy look at me and he said, "But you talk so smart. How could you have been born this way?" And I was real glad I had my intern with me, because my intern literally had to reach over and turn my wheelchair off because I was so offended by this comment. And y'all, he wasn't a Republican.
Well,
And so that's my point. And so hang on, Steph. So I know we're both sides of the aisle here, but there's this stupidity on both sides of the aisle about intellectual and developmental disabilities, that our kids can't do anything. I didn't birth them, but y'all did. And I want to be a support system for that. So I'm going to claim them as mine. So let me try to wrap this up because I'm all over the place. And I'm sorry, I'm having a low blood sugar freak out here. So, when you, these are the fears that I need to hear and that I need to express to people, both in positions of influence and in elected positions. It might interest you all to know that this town is not run by the senators and the House members. It is run by 28-year-old staffers. The average age of a Hill staffer in the District of Columbia is between 28 and 33, depending on which day you take the survey. Which I was floored when I realized that. On the state level, the average staffer is 45 to 55. That blew my mind too. And I say all that to say this. You got people in DC making decisions and preparing briefing papers for their members of Congress that don't have any life experience. And that is why your voices are so important. So I'm going to wrap this up because I'm yapping a whole bunch. If you would like me to, I will individually meet with you or meet with you as a group and do a step-by-step. I know people like Nicole don't need this because I can see she's all over it and she doesn't know that I know this, but her reputation precedes her from my days back in the first Trump administration. Oh, in a very positive way. In a very positive way. You are a badass who knows how to get stuff done and don't apologize for it. Oh, she's slinking off camera. You must reach out on paper, not by email, not by phone, on paper. And then follow up 10 days after you've sent the postcard by email, because that is the most effective way. And then 3 weeks after that, by phone. And keep your comments to bulleted points. And it's not that they don't care and they don't want to hear your stories. It is just, y'all, they are at such a fevered pitch. And so many of these people, the average age. Okay, so Elizabeth, I'll answer that and then I'll hush. And we can talk about this more later. The average age of the people answering the phone in Washington is 21. 21. And I was a 21-year-old staffer in DC once upon a time because, see, the interns answer the phone. And I worked for Al Gore. I'm from Tennessee, and Al Gore and Jim Sasser were our senators at the time when I wanted a Senate internship that later turned into a job. And so I got really frustrated one day, and a frustrated Melissa Ortiz I was Melissa Durham at the time. A frustrated Melissa is a bad thing. I had somebody on the phone screaming at me and I was in tears. And Senator Gore walked by and in his Southern Ivy League voice said, "No tears. I do not allow crying at my front desk." And he thought he was being cute. And what he didn't expect was me to reach up, yank the headset off my head and say, jump out of my chair and say, "Sit down." And I plopped the headset on his head and walked out. And stood out in the hall where I could see the desk, and he sat there and answered the phone for 20 minutes. And he came away from that and he said, "I think I need to be treating my front office staff a lot better, and I'm going to start spreading the word to my fellow senators that people are getting treated like shit in our front offices by our constituents, and it's not okay." And we're still friends. We're still friends. The senator and I are still friends. And but not everybody's going to have that experience. And not everybody's spine is as stiff as mine that I'm not scared to look at somebody and say that. But I do know that people care. They're just really crappy at showing it. And that's no excuse. That is no excuse. And if there are specific things that you want me to share with federal legislators, get them to me and I will get them in front of them. Because the cool thing about being in a wheelchair that goes 10 miles an hour is they can't outrun me. And they sure as hell can't outrun me in dress shoes on marble floors and on granite floors in the House and Senate and Capitol buildings. for whatever reason, God has put me in a position to be able to get their attention. And I want to be your voice if you're interested in that. And if you want me to be, especially with the ones that you don't think are listening. Now, moving on from that, somebody said they didn't know what to ask for. What do you need? Not, I always tell people I have one of the problems with advocates when they come to DC to meet with their legislative staff, because very rarely do they get to meet with an actual member of Congress, unless that member of Congress is running for reelection. And then by gum, by golly, they're going to have their picture made with everybody that comes in the office. Did I say that out loud? That was mean. So people ask for the sky. And it's like the choice between, do you need a pound of ground beef for dinner so that your family doesn't go hungry, or do you need a pound of steak? Which one is more important? The steak, the filet mignon, is awesome, and we all should have filet mignon at some point in our lives because it's a treat. But what you really need day to day is that pound of ground beef. Does that kind of resonate with anybody?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, this group, no one in this group is asking for filet mignon.
Oh, I see that.
And I think, first of all, holy moly, thank you for being here. And I can't say enough. I talked to you at like 11 o'clock last night and you said, sure.
Thanks for making
So
everybody hungry. Thank you.
really
I'm
appreciate.
sorry.
You're good. Again, you're amongst families here. Like we're all
I'm
just
too sick to eat. Don't worry about it.
But I know for a fact that one thing that we are all dying to know is, where is the clarity in those cuts for people with disabilities? What does that look like? What can we expect? And there are going to be a lot of individual requests. And like, Melissa, I don't actually really know you. I know you through a friend, but I've reached out to Melissa 6 or 7 times throughout the last couple years, and every time she has a response. She is in the beach. She's right in DC. We have a DC question mark. I don't want our families here in Florida who we did this group here, and there are a lot more who can't be on the call today. This group has really made significant changes within the hearts of our legislators, within the actions of our local legislators. And we've got them. We've got them. Like Alan said at the beginning of the call, he's in his multi-decades, I don't know how many decades, but a lot of decades, experience, hasn't heard developmental disabilities, Chapter 393, which is our state statute for developmental, ever this much mentioned. And these are just in pre-committees, and there are bills just being pulled out. And last week when we started this, really important conversation, you just verified you're scared shitless like the rest of us too. So, really important conversation to have. I'm trying to figure out, what do we balance here? Because we're right on the heels of a possibly epic session. And do we continue to move along that side? Do we need to chew gum and walk to? And
Sadly, yes.
yeah, okay. Okay. All right. All right. All right. Well, then we can wrap our heads around that. And what I heard you say is that everybody on this call can email you any concern, anything related to federal concerns that you have, and Melissa will outrun whatever legislator that she needs to do, all those federal people.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but I also have one of the things that a lot of people, I don't talk about it a lot because it was so long ago. Awesome, Daniel. And I want to help, and I will be reading that email. Now, I was back in the 90s, because I'm old. God, y'all, I'm going to be 59 years old this year. And my parents were told that I was not going to live to graduate high school. So, yay. So sorry, I'm still really excited about that. Gen X was the first generation born with spina bifida, who lived to adulthood and thrived into adulthood. That is my diagnosis. I also have had 11 head traumas, either through fevers or disease or smacks in the head. So I'll say all this to say that back in the 90s, I was the assistant journal clerk in the Tennessee State Senate. And my cousin was the chief clerk in the House. And for the 2 years that we were in office, the Tennessee legislature ran like gangbusters. Not because we were in charge, because we were far from being in charge, but we were really good at motivating the people in charge to get things done. And I rode to work and rode home with him every day, and we would just plan out the next day's conversations. And so I still have those friends, and I will do anything I can. I still have friends from those days when I was in the state legislators who are still Hill staffers in their individual states. I am happy to connect you with other people in other states if you want to get ideas about what they're doing. My very first speech, okay, so in 2017, when Donald Trump was sworn in and they were talking about Obamacare replacement, not killing insurance for people who needed it, but replacing it with something that was going to be a little more financially feasible, they thought. They realized, and I was not yet, this is how I got my job. They were 48 hours out from the meeting of all the stakeholders, and they realized that they had nobody with a disability or a pre-existing condition of any kind at the table. And I got an 11 o'clock at night phone call from the guy running the meeting for Vice President Pence. And he said, and he's like my brother, and he said, "How much do you love me?" And whenever somebody starts a phone call out with me like that, I'm like, I know they want something and it's really big. And I said, "What do you want?" And he said, "I need you to come to this meeting, and you've got exactly probably 36 hours to read the legislation." So I took my no-dos or whatever the equivalent was that I was taking and stayed up I was literally up for 48 hours with no sleep to read this legislation. At the end of the meeting with Vice President Pence, he looked at me and he said, "You are wearing the Southern lady look of disapproval, and I want to know why." And y'all, I was born in Atlanta, raised outside of Nashville. It doesn't get a whole lot more Southern than that. And I said, "Well, Mr. Vice President, this legislation doesn't do anything to allow people with disabilities to get what they need. If they want to work, if they are able to work and they want to work and they are not eligible for Medicaid as a result, this doesn't give them what they need. And if they can't get insurance through their work, they're screwed. Is that what you want?" And he said, "Can you unpack that for me?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Let me start by saying that there are 4 people sitting at the table with us this morning who could have hired me over the last 8 years and chose not to because I would be too expensive on their insurance. That's another thing that people with disabilities deal with when they want to go to work." And he said, "I want names." And I said, "Oh, Mr. Vice President, you know, Ronald Reagan said we don't talk ill about fellow Republicans by name." And y'all, he appeared, and he appeared at my elbow after the meeting was over. And this was after I had spent 15 minutes explaining what it is to live with a disability or to have a child with a disability, whether it's intellectual development or physical, or God forbid, all three, which is usually often the case. He was bawling, and staffers were bawling. And it's not because I'm good. It's just because I was pissed and screaming at them. And I taught school for 10 years. And when I revert to teacher voice, it makes grownups nervous. And they were all nervous and they just wanted me to shut up. And at the end of the meeting, the vice president appeared at my elbow and he said, was it Johnny, Susie, Mike, and Betty? Those aren't their real names, who didn't want to hire you?" I said, "Yeah, how did you know?" And he said, because he asked me a direct question and I wasn't going to lie. And he said, "Because the moment you opened your mouth, they were all about to jump out of their skin. And the look of 'get me out of here' was on their face." We all know what happened with
Hey,
that.
Melissa,
Yeah.
I just wanna, we're almost out of time. So I just
Oh,
want to,
Lord, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'll hurry really quick.
okay.
3 months later, I was sworn as the commissioner of the Administration on Disability, because not only had I earned the trust of the administration in that meeting, 10 years before that, I had worked for Donald Trump in New York City helping to make his buildings accessible. So I'll shut
No,
up now. But
well, no, again, that's all really valuable information. Unfortunately, I don't get to say, "Hey, everything's gonna be okay." This Washington advocate says she's got a beat on it, so clearly that's not the case. And at the same time, we're gonna chew gum and walk too,
mhm,
because we do have the heartbeat of our local legislature. There are bills that have been put out, that we are, the ARC has put their statement of support in some of those bills. The DD Council is behind some of those bills, and as families, we, now that we're going to be moving into session when we go to DD Day, we really want to get to understand what those bills are so that we can go meet with our local legislator when we all hang out in Tallahassee on March
mhm.
11th together for DD Day, and have some meaningful discussion about these bills, because we do have incredible legislation that's being done, is still being put out. And so next week, Doug Bruce is going to come on. He couldn't get off mute this week. And I don't know if, for those of you who are a part of our group last year when we went to Tallahassee, Doug helped a lot of what we did kind of behind the scenes. He's been in Tallahassee. He knows, he knows how to go with these policies, how to do high level policies and bring it down to a family level. Because I loved what she said when she said she stayed up for 48 hours reading a piece of legislation.
Y'all don't have time to do that.
Oh, well, I'm telling you, there are people, and me included, who have been in that situation, and not so that we could read it for like the vice president, so that we could understand it and advocate for ourselves or for our children or for our loved ones, because we are so incredibly passionate that being involved personally as families has been a game changer to move good policy forward and to push bad policy out. And so I want to make sure that the people on this call and the people in our group know that We the People was an intentional name. We have elected representatives to serve us, and we are their boss, and we want a good relationship with them, and we want to
Mhm,
engage with them on our families. And the way that we do that every day, all day, no matter who we are, is by sharing our stories, our truths.
mhm.
That has been wildly effective. So next week, Doug's going to give us the super professional rundown on how we can do that. I want to make sure that I say again that Developmental Disability Awareness Day is March 11th in Tallahassee. We are going. I'll be honest, we're not as organized as we were last year. But if you want to go, if you are going, could you please, Nicole? I'm sorry. Email Nicole, and we want to start to establish that list. I've reached out to the senator that let us use her office last time to see if we could get that same space. And as many people that can be there, regardless of what's happening up in Washington, D.C., we have the attention of those elected to serve us here, and we need to be able to kind of stay the course. And I am right there I've heard from a lot of you about the fears and the concerns, and I'm right there with you. And I don't know what to do about all of that either. And I think that we have to double pivot and put our attention. So we have committee
Can you
meetings.
see me? Can you see me? Anybody see me with my hand up?
Yes, Lily, committee meetings, and then we'll let you go. And if you need to get off the call,
No, I have a question for her.
not you.
I'm here.
Hang
Okay,
on,
good.
Lily. Hang on, Lily.
Yeah,
So I just want to
I've
wrap
been.
it up. We're here again next Friday at 3 p.m. and every Friday till the end of session. We are going to take a break this year so we can get better organized. But at every session, I also want to make sure that really awesome conference. Family Cafe is the largest disability conference in America. Registration open today. There are spots on that application where if you need financial assistance, you can click on it. And I don't know how that works out, but I would do that right away to get to Family Cafe. We were honored to be able to present again this year on what we do here in this group. So we will have a presentation and as many families that can be a part of it. There's just so much good that happens at Family Cafe, well beyond, you know, the official things. It's that connection piece that really it felt it's magic. So that's the end of the announcements. I want to thank everybody, wish everyone happy Valentine's Day. And if you want to stay on and chat, we're here for that, but I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off. You got to be here to participate in the fun offline stuff. So.